It started with a whisper, just a rumor passed around late-night campfires and on internet forums dedicated to urban legends, a town that once existed but was erased from maps, a place where people disappeared without a trace. The town of Ravenwood. In the late 1800s, Ravenwood was a thriving settlement deep in the Appalachian Mountains. It had a booming mining industry, a growing population, and everything a small town needed to flourish. But then something happened, something so terrifying that the town and its residents seemed to vanish overnight. Chapter 1. The Arrival. In 2023, a documentary filmmaker named Daniel Reeves became obsessed with Ravenwood after stumbling upon old newspaper clippings. Reports of the town's sudden disappearance intrigued him, a town with no official records. Yet there were faded photographs, abandoned property deeds, and accounts of a bustling community until one day it all stopped. Determined to uncover the truth, Daniel gathered a small crew. His best friend and historian, Mark, his girlfriend and lead researcher, Emily, and their tech expert, Jake. Armed with old maps and satellite imagery, they set off on a journey into the mountains. The road leading to Ravenwood had long been abandoned. Trees grew thick, nature reclaiming the space. The deeper they drove, the quieter the world around them became. No birds, no wind, just an eerie stillness. And then, out of nowhere, the town appeared. It was exactly as the old photographs had shown. Dusty streets, weathered buildings, and a heavy mist blanketing everything. The air was thick with something unnatural, something oppressive. They felt watched, though no one was there. Their first steps into the town were hesitant. Daniel rolled the camera, narrating their every move. Jake checked his GPS. No signal. Emily flipped through her research notes, but none of the documented landmarks matched what they were seeing. The town seemed different, altered. Then a whisper drifted through the air, coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. A shadow moved in the corner of their vision, disappearing when they turned to look. The air grew colder, and the distant clang of metal echoed as if something was moving beneath the ground. Daniel pointed toward the town square, where an old statue stood. The figure's face had been worn away, but its outstretched hands held a rusted plaque. The inscription read, "We remain in silence, lest we awaken them." A chill ran through the group. What exactly had they walked into? Chapter 2. The Silent Town. The group stepped out of their car, cameras rolling. They called out, expecting silence. Instead, a church bell rang in the distance. The town had no visible residents, yet doors stood ajar, furniture remained in houses, and it felt as if people had left in a hurry. Inside an old diner, plates sat on tables with uneaten meals, now decayed. A record player spun on repeat, though no one had been there to start it. It was as if time had stopped, as if the town was frozen in the moment it was abandoned. Emily found a journal belonging to a woman named Margaret Whitmore, dated October 14th, 1892, the very night the town disappeared. It spoke of shadows that moved unnaturally, voices whispering in the wind, and an impending doom the residents could feel but not see. There were pages torn out, the last entry cut off mid-sentence. "Tonight we lock the doors, but they will still come. We are all ready." Then a scream echoed through the empty streets. Rushing outside, they found themselves disoriented. The buildings looked slightly different than before. The streets seemed to stretch farther than they had a moment ago. The town was shifting. A child's laughter broke the silence. They turned to see a small girl in a tattered white dress standing at the edge of the fog, staring at them. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Then she turned and ran into the mist. Mark followed instinctively, disappearing into the dense fog. Chapter 3. The First Vanishing. Panic set in as they searched for Mark. His voice was nowhere to be heard. His footprints vanished as quickly as they appeared. The fog thickened, suffocating them in its grasp. They called his name, but only their own echoes returned. Then the whispers came again, dark, elongated figures slithered between the buildings, moving unnaturally. Their limbs stretched and twisted as they crawled along the rooftops. Emily screamed as one of them darted towards her. Jake grabbed her and ran. Back at the car, Daniel realized the vehicle wouldn't start. The road they had driven in on, gone. They tried retracing their steps, but it was as if Ravenwood had swallowed them whole. They passed the same diner 3 times, yet their footprints never remained in the dirt. Something was erasing their presence. Then the whispering grew louder. It wasn't just one voice, it was many, overlapping in a chorus of hushed terror. They spoke names, their names, a rustling behind them. Daniel turned. Mark stood there, his face blank, his lips moving soundlessly. Chapter 4. The Church and the Ritual. Inside, the air was heavy with the scent of burnt wood and old candles. The pews were covered in dust, yet fresh footprints led toward the altar. At the pulpit lay an old book, Margaret Whitmore's final entries. It detailed the town's descent into darkness, the ritual that had gone wrong. Ravenwood had tried to save itself from a curse that befell the miners. A wrongfully accused woman was buried alive beneath the town, her rage seeping into the soul. The townsfolk had attempted a ritual to contain the darkness, but they failed. Instead, they sealed their own fate, trapping themselves in a time loop where they vanished, reappeared, and vanished again. The last page bore a warning: the cycle must not be broken. If the ritual is stopped, the town will hunger once more. Daniel looked up. The air inside the church felt charged, electric. The whispers became voices, clear and filled with anguish.
Join us.
Pews trembled, shadows pooled along the floor. Emily gasped as the book in her hands turned to dust. Jake grabbed her wrist.
We need to leave, now.
But there was no exit. The doors that once stood open were now solid stone. Windows darkened, the shadows inched closer. A breath on Daniel's neck. He turned. Mark was there, his skin pale, his eyes devoid of anything human.
It's time for me to go.
He whispered. The darkness swallowed them whole. Chapter 5. The Final Broadcast. Weeks later, authorities found their abandoned car at the mountain's edge. No sign of Daniel, Emily, Mark, or Jake. Only their camera remained, the footage intact. The final recording showed Daniel staring into the camera, his voice barely above a whisper.
If you find this, don't come looking. Ravenwood isn't gone. It's waiting. And once you enter, it never lets you leave.
Then, static, the video was uploaded online but mysteriously disappeared within hours, and those who had watched it claimed to hear whispers in the dark. The town of Ravenwood remains a mystery, a place lost to time, yet never truly gone. Some say if you listen closely on a quiet night, you can still hear the whispers calling out, beckoning new souls to join them. But remember, curiosity has a price. If you ever come across a road that leads to nowhere, a town not marked on any map, turn around. because once Ravenwood welcomes you, it never lets you leave. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more terrifying tales. And remember, some legends are best left forgotten.